Hello and welcome to my channel. Yesterday, I remember sharing a video about people of my color being scared of the Project 2025. Well, it turns out that palm color people are also scared about it as well. In this video, the white lady talks about things that are already happening or have been happening even before the 2025 project, where the government comes in and collects a bunch of people they don't like and putting them into camps, children being taken and beating them into submission, them taking away the voices of people, and so many things which have been happening to indigenous people. But she highlights to say all this has not been happening to white people, and maybe it's just going to take them to have an experience of these cruelties for them to realize how bad it's been. Let's check out these videos.
I've been sitting with this thought for a minute, and I hope you take the time to sit with it as well. Someone else said that the reason why so many people are afraid of Project 2025 is because we as white people are afraid of being treated the same way that everyone else has been treated this entire time. And at first I was like, nuh-uh, but really think about this. What is the scariest part about Project 2025? The government coming in and collecting a bunch of people that they don't like and putting us into camps, when that's been happening. We're afraid of them taking our children and beating them into submission, when that's been happening. Them taking our voices away from us, when that's been happening. Them taking our bodily autonomy, when that's been happening. It just hasn't been happening to white people. It really makes you think, you know? It's a hard pill to swallow. But I think an even harder pill to swallow. I think it's going to take people to have to experience these cruelties themselves before they realize how bad it's been. And then and only then will they want a change.
Well, my thoughts on Project 2025 are what the f are Democrats going to do about it? Like Republicans are doing this, okay? This is their plan. This has been their plan for literal decades, long before little Donnie Trump showed up on the scene and stole their cult. Donald Trump delivered them the Supreme Court they couldn't have imagined they'd ever have. And so the question to me, it isn't to throw up my hands and be like terrified of Republicans, because I know exactly what they're going to do. The question is there anybody, so are Democrats going to just say, well, we're just going to like let the system of government that will allow them to legally take over the government, we're just going to let them have that? They're telling us what they're going to do. They have opted out of the legal system, of the social contract, of shared government.
The Republican Party's agenda for women in this upcoming 2024 election is pretty clear. They want us married to men and having their children, and that is the only thing they want for us. They don't want us to be single mothers. They don't want us to be in same-sex relationships, and they definitely do not want us to be childless. If you don't believe me, this came directly from their playbook, The Mandate for Leadership, on Project 2025's website. Let's start here. On page 13, promise number 4 says that they want to secure our God-given individual right to enjoy the blessings of liberty. They say the pursuit of the good life is found primarily in family, marriage, and children. On page 451, one of their goals for the Department of Health and Human Services is to promote stable and flourishing married families. Families comprised of a married mother, father, and their children are the foundation of a well-ordered nation and healthy society. Unfortunately, family policies and programs under President Biden's Health and Human Services are fraught with agenda items focusing on, quote, LGBTQ equity, quote, subsidizing single motherhood, disincentivizing work, and penalizing marriage. These policies should be repealed and replaced by policies that support the formation of a stable, married, nuclear family.
You know the Heritage Foundation, one of the biggest players in the Christian nationalist shadow network that's planning to undermine our democracy? Well, in less than 2 years, they're basically planning on taking over the entire government. They've recently created a 920-page book called Mandate for Leadership, The Conservative Promise. That's basically a step-by-step guide of what they want to implement if they can get a handmaid in the Oval Office in the next election. They're calling their plan Project 2025. If you remember Project Blitz, it's a little bit like that, but way bigger. The crazy part is that this Mandate for Leadership thing isn't even new. It has a lot of terrifying similarities to the secret memo that future Supreme Court Justice Lewis Powell wrote to the Chamber of Commerce almost 50 years ago in 1971. And this is a must-read, by the way, if you want to know more about that. It's just that when they put it all out there in writing and you see everything that they want to do in one place, it's alarming. It's the Koch brothers' American dream come true. The parts that aren't explicitly white supremacist, Christian nationalist, anti-LGBTQ, American capitalist propaganda are all just dog whistles for those things anyways. They base it around 4 pillars, which are restore the family as the centerpiece of American life and protect our children, dismantle the administrative state and return self-governance to the American people. Like I said, dog whistles, right? Defend our nation's sovereignty, borders, and bounty against global threats. And secure our God-given individual rights to live freely, what our Constitution calls the blessings of liberty. There's honestly so much in here that the destruction of the wall between separation of church and state just kind of meshes with everything else. But they're literally planning on destroying that separation using the mirage of religious freedom when it's actually just Christian supremacy for cis, straight, white, able-bodied, Christian, conservative, upper-class men. Instead of true religious freedom, this is what the mandate wants to use religious freedom for. Religious freedom for adoption and foster care agencies to refuse to place children in families that are either not Christian or not a straight married couple. Religious freedom for employers to discriminate against workers regardless of non-discrimination laws as long as it's part of their personal religion. Religious freedom of parents to use state money to send their kids to private religious schools. But then at the same time, the religious freedom of taxpayers to not have to fund abortion or travel expenses for those seeking abortion, even though that's a medically necessary expense. Religious freedom of employers and universities to deny access to workers and students to get contraception. Religious freedom of houses of worship to ignore public safety measures during a global pandemic and hold large in-person gatherings. Religious freedom of public colleges and universities to ignore anti-discrimination and other laws that conflict with their religious beliefs. And obviously a lot more. Like, they actually also wanted to impose a congressionally recognized Sabbath day. But none of this is what religious freedom actually does. And by the way, AU has litigated almost all of these issues in court, and we've almost always won. So if you're scared of Project 2025, and I don't know why you wouldn't be, you should be supporting Americans United. We've been in this fight for over 75 years, and we need your help now more than ever.
I just started reading Project 2025, and yeah. I have spent the last 3 or 4 hours trying to figure out how I would explain the gravity to someone that has no idea what's going on. For those of you unaware what it is, the Heritage Foundation is a conservative organization that produced a document. And that document outlines the ideas of conservative values going forward and what they plan to do to keep them around. I thought the people reporting on this were sensationalizing it, and I was horrifically wrong. People asked me for my take on it, and I promised them that I would not make a determination until I had actually seen what was in it. And I don't want you to think that this is me lobbing political shots at the other side. Project 2025 is a fascist manifesto, and I don't mean that hyperbolically. I mean that literally. It hits pretty much every tenet of fascism there is. It promotes the idea that the nation has become corrupt and needs to be fixed by returning to a time of national greatness. It weaponizes free speech by saying that we need to remove certain things to actually make free speech. In other words, free speech for me, but not for thee. The demonization of marginalized groups and migrants. The obsession with national security. That the urban areas and the elite are actually dragging us down, and it's the heartland, the rural heartland, is lifting us up. The anti-feminism, the anti-equality, the belief in the social hierarchy as well as the economic hierarchy, the promotion of the nuclear family, the self-victimization that racism doesn't exist unless it's directed at white people. It's even got the anti-Semitism with the global elites and the cultural Marxism. This checks every box, period. It was that the right used to do something called crypto-fascism, meaning they hid it. They wanted it optically to look good, meaning there was a degree of deniability. You do this with things like dog whistling and gaslighting. You put hidden meanings in things instead of saying what you want to do outright. And this document basically says, fuck it, mask off, full send. We're not going to do that anymore because it's failing. And they acknowledge that in the document. The people that wrote this are fully aware that that strategy stopped working. It's not working anymore. It worked in the 70s, the 60s, the 80s. It worked through that, but it doesn't work anymore. Republicans have won one popular election since 1988, and they know they have to do something. This document is them saying, we don't have another option. Full send. And what they're advocating for is pure fascism. This is absolutely terrifying. And no matter who you have to swallow your pride and vote for in 2024, this can't happen. The fate of democracy is literally on the line.
So, Project 2025. When I first started reading this document, I assumed it was just like all the other mandates for leadership that were produced by the Heritage Foundation. But, holy cow. This document quite literally reads like Democrats and liberals are the enemy of the United States, and they often quote the American Revolution and Civil War when they're making those accusations. It's like 400 of your crazy aunts and uncles who no one wants to talk to at Thanksgiving got together, wrote down every trope and insult they've heard on Fox News, Newsmax, and OAN, and put it into a manifesto that reads like it was written by one of the mass shooters we've seen in this country since Tucker Carlson and Donald Trump joined forces. Of course, if that mass shooter had a degree from Liberty University, but I digress. When I started summarizing this manifesto, I realized it would take 11 hours to read the summary. So I'll tell you why I did it like I've done it right now. Only the most serious of policy wonks are going to read this document, and it would be impossible to explain it to someone without their eyes glazing way over. This is a manifesto by extreme right-wing conservatives meant specifically for policymakers, future Republican cabinet secretaries, and politicians. But here are the main points you need to know about Project 2025 in order to motivate your friends to go out and vote against these extremists who are mobilizing their plan to dismantle the federal government from the inside. Now first, when I call this a manifesto, many parts of it are blatantly militant, and I cannot stress that enough. You all know I don't like hyperbole. This manifesto effectively suggests there is only one way to fix America, and that's by force. It is an ends justify the means type of document. It's gutting environmental agencies and regulations, anything advocating gender or reproductive rights, and labor relations and unions. And I'll quote, Congress should also consider whether public sector unions are appropriate in the first place. Now, second, there is a hatred for people in this document I've never read from a serious conservative think tank. The first thing they want to do is dismantle the human resources departments of every agency in the executive branch so they can no longer protect minorities, people with disabilities, LGBTQ plus folks, and anyone who is not, and I'll quote again, ideologically aligned with the president's agenda. It is a manifesto that believes all federal workers in the executive branch are there to serve at the pleasure of the president, and their jobs depend on the president being pleased. And yes, that's supposed to sound like that. Third, it outlines every single person the president should appoint and what their roles should be. The scariest office it talks about is the office of White House counsel. This office, according to this manifesto, is not there to tell the president they can't do something. It is there to figure out, and they're careful to put in parentheses, within the bounds of law, how to realize the president's agenda. Folks, it is saying the Office of White House Counsel should figure out how to make the president the closest thing to a dictator we've seen in this country, and that's just during the presidential transition. This is quite possibly the scariest sentence in this manifesto. Its staff must take seriously the duty to protect the powers and privileges of the president from encroachments by Congress, the judiciary, and the administrative components of departments and agencies. Effectively, it must make sure the balance of powers don't balance. It goes on to say the White House counsel's office, quote, should function more as an activist yet ethical plaintiff's firm that advocates for its client, the administration's agenda, within the limits imposed by the Constitution and the duties of the legal profession. But they know their twisted understanding of the Constitution can't withstand challenge from the other branches. So the White House counsel's office should effectively make sure the balance don't balance. How freaking scary is that, people? I mean, my God. Now, fourth, it supports gutting the general officer corps of the military and any flag level office who believes in or supports LGBTQ plus rights, gender affirming care for families, reproductive rights, critical race theory and systemic racism, climate change, and one of my absolute favorites in this document, manufactured extremism, which is code for white nationalism and Christian nationalism in the military. Folks, This just scratches the surface. It doesn't get into the Christian nationalism, the First Amendment hypocrisy, or their expansion of the Federalist Society into effectively all areas of government, not just the judiciary. So let me know if you want me to dive deeper into this with a part 2. And also, I'll be changing the name of the channel again. It'll align with my new podcast that's coming out called Reformed with James Killen. I'm a fan of double entendres, so it's a play on me being a reformed conservative and how to reform other conservatives who are starting to see the problem with right-wing extremism. I appreciate y'all.
Now, people are really worried about what will seem to be the new normal if Trump is elected, and their worries for the near future, and the near future seems to be soon. Very rarely do our politicians say the quiet part out loud. They whisper their agenda in the shadows, making backroom handshakes that hurt regular people for the sake of their corporate masters. However, one group publicized their political agenda for the world to see. Now, they are saying the quiet part loud, and it's terrifying. Project 2025 is a political agenda authored by conservatives under the guidance of the Heritage Foundation, outlining the presidential agenda should Republicans retake the White House soon when there are elections. Now, the nearly 1,000-page document busts with inflammatory language outlining an us versus them ideology. Rather than seeking compromise and unity, it sows division. Now, Project 2025 is a wish list for the strictest conservative agendas. It seeks to destroy America's religion's freedom. It calls for the erasure of people who don't fit into its strict hierarchical boxes, while dismantling many legal protections and regulations designed to protect average Americans. Now, page 13 of the Project 2025 highlights the author's disdain for religious freedom and the Constitution. It seeks to redefine America's prized words, offering all its citizens the unalienable right to pursue happiness, rebranding happiness as a blessedness to free the historic words to fit their religious dogma. Now, the lengthy document lists numerous changes for a broad range of government agencies. It's no secret that the Conservative Party plans to stamp essential departments of funding like the Department of Energy and the Department of Education. But Project 2025 also lays out plans to hurt many other essential services. Now, Chapter 20 describes changing disability ratings for future claimants to save money, transitioning essential health care for veterans to private for-profit corporations, and removing the VA's leadership, replacing them with political appointees to serve an agenda. Now, the agenda will also inhibit the power of government agencies by stripping them of their regulatory authority. Now, people value the freedoms enshrined in the Constitution, including the freedom to speak out against the government. Now, this project seeks to destroy all these things and everything that makes America the beacon of hope in this world. Now, who is the project meant to affect? Yesterday, I shared a video of people of my race complaining about it and being scared of this project getting them into slavery. And today, this palm color lady is also complaining about it and is scared of palm color people being treated like how indigenous people have been treated. Let's check out some of the reactions from people on this video. Now, the first comment reads, "There will be no future for any of us if Trump gets back in office. Our children and their children won't have a future. This vote really matters." Yes, they won't care until it happens to them. So many are non-political until they themselves are directly affected. Glad more people are standing up, but the question still remains, who are the people going to vote for? It's like no one will be served when it comes to Project 2025. So what are people going to do about this? Who are they going to vote for? Because initially this is the plan if the Republican Party wins the presidency in 2024. Either Trump or some other Republican president gets inaugurated in January of 2025, and Project 2025 thereby goes into effect. Now, the plan here is to radically change the form of governance that we have in the United States, so as to concentrate all the power of the government in the hands of a single leader. So there won't be any more pockets of independent power outside the power that's held by the president. This means, for example, taking over all federal law enforcement and run that directly for his own benefit through the DOJ. There would be no more independence of federal law enforcement, taking control of private businesses in this country for his own benefit through the powers of the FTC. All these are things that are listed. So instead of checks and balances and limited government, would have more of a strongman system of government with a single leader with all the power of the state personally arrogated to that person. Now, this sounds, I don't know how to describe it, but this is what it is. So kindly share your thoughts in the comment section and let's hear what you think about this. Thank you for watching and see you in my next video.